For this flight, we are going to be taking a British Aerospace 146-300, and we're going to be flying from Aberdeen on the east coast of Scotland here, and flying down to Norwich on the east coast of England. Both of these airports are what you class as regional airports, so relatively low passenger numbers, but they are very typical of the sort of airports that this aircraft would have sort of flown to in its heyday. If, for some reason, we can't land at Norwich, there are any sort of problems, we do have an alternate set in our plan for Stansted, so that would be the first alternate airport that we would consider. In terms of routing, after we take off from Aberdeen, we are going to head towards Glesk, where we'll pick up the Papa 600 airway down to Grice. From Grice, we'll transition onto the November 601 airway down to Tango Lima Alpha. And then from Tango Lima Alpha, we're going to pick up the Yankee 96 airway to take us down to Nateb. So Nateb just north of Newcastle, and from there we will then take a direct path down to Oscar Tango Romeo, the Otteringham location, and from there we will be taking a direct path down to Norwich. In terms of our runways, if we take a closer look at what we're currently considering, based on the weather as it is at this particular point in time, we are expecting to be taking runway 34 out of Aberdeen. So we'll head up and very quickly look to turn left and head off towards Glesk. When we come down through the route out of Scotland into England down the east coast, and as we head into Norwich, our intended runway as the weather is currently would be runway 27. So we would come down from the Otteringham location down to the Charlie India 27 to pick up a direct routing into runway 27. Whether we fly a direct route into runway 27 for a landing straight away, or whether we have to join the pattern and go in and fly a circuit and then come back in, will remain to be seen. Quite often with Flight Simulator, it will actually make you go in to an airport like this where you don't have a proper transition as such, and we're just going straight on to finals. Sometimes it will actually make you fly over and then do the whole circuit. It could also depend on traffic as well. In terms of any potential changes in there, then obviously the weather conditions that we have currently indicate we'd be on runway 34 and 27. However, once we're in the simulator, that could change based on the weather we find, particularly in regards to Norwich. So there's a possibility we could end up being directed onto runway 09 instead, depending on what the weather does in the meantime. The weather not too long ago was not bad around Norwich, but it wasn't ideal. There has been some rain down the east coast of England, and it was actually quite windy slightly earlier in the day, but that wind has died down a little bit now, so I'm hoping that we won't get any sort of changes. If we just take a look at the weather to see what sort of elements we're dealing with, you can see this band of rain out here that's been transitioning across the country, gone out to the other side, and some cloud cover currently still over Norwich at lower levels. Up north around Scotland, coming out of Aberdeen, the weather looks quite nice to start with. If we look at where the cloud cover is and we start to go up through different altitudes, we can see again we've got thicker cloud, especially as you get up to around 19,000-20,000 feet through here. And we are expecting to be on either at 24,000 or 25,000 feet as a cruising altitude. By the time we get down towards Otteringham, we will be starting to look at doing our descent into Norwich. But as you can see, there's quite a bit of cloud. So I think for the latter part of the journey we are actually going to have a fair bit of cloud cover around. But hopefully for the climb out, initial takeoff, climb out and up to cruise altitude, weather may not be too bad. One thing we will be aware of, especially with this cloud down here and the weather patterns that have been going through, is there is an outside chance that we could suffer some icing conditions in the descent. So we'll be keeping an eye out for those as well. Anyway, so that's a brief overview of the flight plan that we're going to take and the sort of weather we're expecting to encounter. So let's go and jump into the cockpit and get ourselves off the ground. Okay, welcome aboard the cockpit of the British Aerospace 146-300 series. We're going to start and get the airplane fired up and out of here. We are at stand 12 currently at Aberdeen. So we have our EFB here, which comes in the plane. Obviously this aircraft in real life never had a electronic flight bag, although I'm sure some airlines may have fitted them since. But we're actually going to use this to facilitate some of the interactions with ground services and for helping a little bit with some of the flight plan loading and things like that. Just a few things that actually speed up the process and make things a little bit easier for us. Also, just a point to note before we start, I do have quite a few mappings on my controllers here, so lots of buttons and lots of assignments set up on here, which means that in terms of operating systems, in a lot of cases I'll go through and I won't necessarily be clicking on switches etc in the cockpit as I'm going around, but I will try and look or point in the rough direction where they are, even when I'm using items on the controllers here, and so therefore you will at least hopefully then get to see what I'm actually interacting with inside the cockpit, or would have been interacting with inside the cockpit. So we're just going to get started with the EFB here. So we're going to go straight in and start with our flight plan. So I want to fetch my current flight plan. So there it is, Aberdeen to Norwich. Routing looks correct from what we've got down here. So Glesk, Papa 600 down to Dyce, November 601 to Tango Lima Alpha, Yankee 96 down to Nateb, and then direct to Oscar Tango Romeo, and then direct into Norwich. In terms of weather conditions, we've got a 29.74 reading here for the altimeter, so we'll actually change the altimeter reading shortly in here to go and match that so that we have the right altitude set. Again at Norwich, things looking about what we expected, so a 10 knots crosswind when we're coming to land, but yeah, not too bad overall. And just to check through the flight plan again, so yes, Dyce to Norwich, so Aberdeen, Dyce to Norwich. Yeah, there's all the airways set with our distances etc, so we are correct in the aircraft. Our fuel plan is all set as we expected, and our loadout options are all set as expected. Cool. Okay, so everything looks to be set correctly. So with all that being said, what we're going to do now is we're just going to go and jump in to the main configuration for the aircraft itself. It's going to ask us if we want to load the payload as well as the flight plan. So we're loading the flight plan into the tablet. We're also going to load the payload in as well. So the load sheet that the dispatchers would give to the pilots is going to come in, and then we're going to use the values from that to actually populate the aircraft. So if we click on import, the values in here now have all changed. So we have just over £2,000 of cargo that's going to go on board, 64 passengers, which agrees with what we had on the load sheet, and we're looking at a little bit below £6,000 of fuel. Okay, so with all this said, we're going to get ground power turned on, and then we're going to start refueling the aircraft. So our ground power's on. There should be a generator which will appear just outside the aircraft. So if we go and have a look outside, see there's a fuel truck already turned up for us if we want it. He's going to drive off again. We don't actually need him. But at the front of the aircraft here we can now see there is a ground generator. Sounds like somebody may have just landed, or that might be the truck driving off. But yeah, this is our plane we're flying today. A FlyBe British Aerospace 146-300. There's quite a bit of noise from the airport, various things going on around the airport, but we've got ground power available. It's all set in there as we need it. So what we're going to do is we're now actually going to come and flick the switch on here to set the power on the aircraft. And as you can hear, we get the bells and whistles, everything starts to come alive inside the aircraft at this point. So before we do anything else, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to start the refueling process. So I'll click on refueling there, and we can now see these values starting to climb as fuel is put into the wing tanks. So whilst we're fueling up, I'm now going to get the aircraft started up. So one of the things we're going to want to do is turn the batteries on. So we'll get those set from my controller, and right at the top here we're going to want to turn the avionics on as well. So again, I'll use switches I've got on my controller mapped in for avionics 1 and B. We're going to turn the autopilot master switch on, and the yaw damper master switches will go on. Anti-skid we are going to put on, and we'll also put the lift spoilers and get them set ready for our flight. We have a switch here for brake fans. So this aircraft does not have reverse thrust on the engines, and so when you come to stop the aircraft when you land, you are wholly reliant on the brakes on the wheels and on the air brake to go and stop it. So it does have brake fans on here, which will allow those brakes on the wheels to be cooled as and when necessary. We'll leave those turned off just for now, but we may put them on afterwards. Okay, working our way around the cockpit or around the switches, we're going to turn engine pumps 1 and 2 on.
Echo Charlie, Yankee Quebec Juliet, request taxi.
The AC pump we're going to put into auto.
Charlie, Yankee, Quebec,
and the DC pump we're going to put on.
Parking via taxiway Echo Cross Runway Tree 2 Cross Runway Tree 4 Cross Runway.
And we can now see we have some hydraulic pressure starting to come through the systems. We're going to leave these standby pumps off, and we are also going to leave the engine fuel pumps off for now.
Taxiway Echo Cross Runway Tree 2 Cross Runway Tree 4 Cross Runway Tree 2.
The next place you want to come is over to here to go and change some of the light settings. So we are on board the plane, we have started up and we are refueling. So we're going to want to turn the nav light on, which is this end switch just here. And again, we'll do this from the controller. So the nav lights are now on. That will warn anybody on the ground that the aircraft is occupied, there is crew on board, and that it's not a sterile area.
Aberdeen Ground Cessna Golf Charlie Whiskey.
Now put the no smoking sign on. And we'll also arm the emergency lights.
Uniform. Pushback request accepted.
There's no other air conditioning or light switches we want to turn on just for now. We'll leave all those as they are. So that's a lot to do with all the air conditioning down this side. And we also have all the ice protection settings down here. Again, we'll leave those as they are for now. So we are still taking on board fuel. So just a quick talk about this aircraft, the British Aerospace 146. So it entered service in the early 1980s. The 300 series model that we're on board came into service in the late 1980s, and production stopped around the year 2000, somewhere in that sort of time frame. They've been reduced or removed from service for most sort of airlines around the UK, but there are still a number of flying. However, because of the time this aircraft was built, it is very much an aircraft of its time. And so what that means is that, as I said, we don't have reverse thrust on the engines. We do not have auto throttle. We do have what we call a TMS, which is a thrust management system on here. This will help a little bit to guide where you want the thrust levers to be and to try and also level out the thrust between the 4 engines. But it is definitely not an auto throttle. The throttle has to be controlled by the pilots at all times. Same with the a UNC1 flight control system here. So it is a flight management computer. The aircraft does have autopilot, but it doesn't have true VNAV capabilities. So whilst we're here, we are going to turn on the UNC1s and let them power up, and they will run through some system checks, and once all the system checks are done, they'll be ready to use. We're going to turn on the weather radar. We shouldn't actually turn it on while we're actually parked at the gate like we are, but it should hopefully inhibit itself whilst we're set in this current configuration. We're also going to put on the radios, so COM1 and COM2 radios will go on. ADF unit is going to go on. So that is all set. I'm going to put on the navigation unit, so that will come and power up now and set itself shortly. I'm going to put on the flight director bars in there, so they are set. And I'm actually going to put the radio navigation across whilst I remember to do it, although we haven't actually got the flight all programmed in as of yet. So on the UNC1, it's now powered up. We're just going to accept the settings. We can see the location is set and the database we are using is up to date. So we can click accept on there. Just briefly going to come down to the yaw damper, activate that so it's ready. And then we'll see where we're going with fuel. So the fuel is now loaded. So seeing as the fuel is now loaded, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to start up the APU and transition power from the external battery source into the APU. So let's give the APU a start. To do that, we're going to have to turn on the left inner fuel pump. So left inner fuel pump is set. And let's start up the APU. Okay, so the APU is now started. If we go externally, we can now see some exhaust gases coming out from the venting here. So the APU is at the back of the aircraft, and that is now up and running. So with the APU running, what I'm just going to do is just check that we actually have battery power looking good, which we do, and we're going to check that the APU generator currently isn't producing any power because we've not set it on. But if we put the APU generator on, and we can see we've now got power coming from the APU generator. So at this point we can now turn off the external power. The APU generator now comes online and is now providing power to the aircraft. And with that being set, we will now turn off the ground power. We'll put the APU air conditioning switch on, so we can just start getting some air conditioning set inside the aircraft before we load up. Okay, refueling is complete. The next thing we want to do is going towards the passenger boarding. So we want to start and get the passengers on board, and we'll see the door will open, the gates will come down, the cargo areas are now open, and we have music playing in the back to keep the passengers amused whilst they come on board. So the next thing we want to do is we want to go and just set up the flight plan, make sure everything is set how we want it. So we'll go to the flight plan, we will go and select our first entry in there, and we're going to cheat slightly. Rather than entering the flight plan directly, we are going to copy it from the EFB, which is why I transferred it earlier. and we want to go from EGPD to EGSH, so we can select number 5 on there and click enter, and our route is now set, and we saw the direction needles change here to indicate the direction we need to be heading in initially when we go and climb out. Okay, next thing we want to do on the flight plan is we can go to our menu and we can go and set up our departure. We are going to be departing on runway 34, we said, didn't we? That was the one, I believe. Yep, so you runway 34, so that will be number 6, and enter, and we're going to go in by the Glesk transition. That's all set, so we go back into our flight plan. We can now set that we are set as expected for runway 34 on our heading, and then again if we go back into the menu, go for our arrival, we are expecting runway 27, so we'll set that in there as runway 27. There are no stars, but we can come down to our approach, and we're going to want an ILS 27 approach. And we're going to go in via the Charlie India 27. And if we go back to our flight plan now, we can now check all this off. So there's our initial climb out into Glesk, Yankee, etc. And our routing looks correct as we come down from OTR, CI27, FI27, runway 27. So we'll go back to the top of our flight plan from there. Over here we're just going to click on the nav button on the top, which will set us for our first waypoint. Okay, so now I want to go and put the radios on. And we're going to select the ATIS here at Aberdeen, which is the Air Traffic Information Service. This will tell us about the current weather conditions at the airport and also what runways are in use and any other pertinent information we have to go and pick up. So we need to be tuned into 121855.
Aberdeen Airport information, Mike 1000 Zulu. Wind 161 at 6. Visibility 6. Sky condition, cube clouds at 9,700 feet, cube clouds at 13,600 feet. Temperature 11. Dew point 10. QNH 29er, decimal 7.
Okay, so we've got 2977.
16 in use. Landing and departing runway tree 4. DFR aircraft say direction of flight. All aircraft read back, hold short and...
So as you can see, we're now set at 2977.
Initial contact, you have Mike.
Okay, we're now going to go into ground. We've confirmed we're on runway 34. So we'll tune in 121705 again, back onto the ground.
Sky condition, cube clouds at 9,000...
And we're now going to request our IFR clearance.
Aberdeen Ground Jersey 267 ready to copy IFR clearance to Norwich.
Jersey 267 is cleared to Norwich Airport as filed. Takeoff runway tree 4, climb and maintain 14,000 feet. Departure frequency is 119.875 squawk 4633.
Okay, so our squawk code is going to be 4633.
Cabin crew, onboard and cross-check.
So that's our squawk code set.
267, did you copy?
Initial altitude is going to be 14,000 feet. So we're going to set the 14,000 feet up here.
Departure on 119.875 squawk 4633.
Jersey 267, read that correct. Contact ground on 121.705. Good day.
So we're now set at 14,000 feet. We know we're going out of runway 34, so the other thing we're going to do is we're going to set the heading bug to line up with the runway. So we can see the heading bug here. It's now set as expected. And our departure frequency is going to be 119.875, so that's who we're going to have to contact after we take off. So to remind me of what that is, I'm actually going to go and set on the COM2 radios over here in the standby frequency 119.875. Okay, so that's set. So that will remind me to set that as we get ready to depart. Okay, so boarding is complete. One thing we want to do now is we want to go and check the weights on the aircraft to make sure that we are set as expected. So we'll click on the fuel on here. We can see we have 64 passengers on board, which is correct. Our cargo is 2071, which is correct. And the fuel on board is just under, you can just see it underneath there, just under the 6,000 mark, which we expected. So all of our ratings there are correct. We can go back to our flight plan. So now we know all of our ratings are correct. One thing we can do is we can use this calculator on here. So this is a reference board. We can see what settings we've got in here, and we can see our V speeds that are set for our takeoff based on our current weight. So what we're expecting to do is to set these speeds into our speed bugs, which are on our airspeed indicators on here. And if I click onto here,
Aberdeen ground Cessna Golf Whiskey Alpha Papa Yankee.
you can now see the speed bugs have gone and set, and our expected bugs on the engines are also set to advise what we should be on. I'm also going to change the system in here, so we're just going to start off the TMS system. The TMS system is in. I'm going to change the flex temperature a little bit, which will actually change the ratings of the engines.
Taxi to and hold short runway tree 4 using taxiway. Delta Mike 2.
So the TMS system is now set and ready to go. So just before we go in and do anything else, we now need to go and configure a taxi because we want to be able to taxi out from here. So let's go and get ourselves set up ready to taxi. So to do that, I'm going to use a pushback tool that I've got, and I'm going to go and plan our pushback. So from our parking position here, we're going to want to go back onto the taxiway over there. So I'm going to initially get us to go to directly back to here, and then we're going to want to be pushed back into position just over here somewhere onto the center of the taxi line. Okay, that's good. We can accept that, and our pushback is all programmed in, ready to go. Okay, with that set, we're almost now ready for our takeoff. So passengers are all boarded, everything looks good in there at the moment. Let's go and turn off the ribbon, toolbar ribbon in the game. And we're going to get ourselves ready just before we go into our pushback. So I'm going to put the extra fuel pumps on, ready, because we're going to want these to be on, ready to start the engines once we start to go into our pushback. Okay, so I believe we are pretty much set. Just doing one last sweep around the cabin to make sure we've got everything set as we need it before we start pushback. Okay, I believe we're good, so let's go and request the pushback from the air traffic control.
Aberdeen ground Jersey 267 with November ready to taxi IFR.
Jersey 267 taxi to and hold short of runway tree 4 via taxiway, Delta Mike Mike 2 Mike 1. Contact tower on 121.25 when ready.
Okay, so we acknowledge that clearance.
Taxi to and hold short runway tree 4 via
The tower is on 121250, so we're just going to go and get the radio set ready for 121250 for when we are ready to take off at the end of the taxi. We are 121250 is set, and on our departure airport we just want to go and look at our taxi routes on here. So if we're going to look at the airport, as you say, we've got taxiing from Delta, which is where we are currently. We're going to go up to Delta, and then we are going to join the Mike taxiway, which will take us along this way here and through Mike 1 and Mike 2 just onto the end of runway 34. So that's our taxi path. Before we taxi, or before we can have pushback, first thing we need to do is remove the chocks, which we are going to do. So the chocks are now removed, and we are going to request pushback.
Cockpit to ground.
This is ground, stand by.
We are going to release our parking brake.
Aberdeen ground, Beechcraft Oscar Yankee, Hotel Zulu Papa with November request taxi to the active departure to the east.
Okay,
Beechcraft Oscar Yankee, Hotel Zulu Papa taxi to and hold short of runway tree 4 via taxiway Delta Mike.
So we are now taxiing out. Whilst we taxi out, we're going to turn on the master start switch for the engines. We're going to select engine number 4 to start with, and again fuel pumps are turned on, so we're going to press start, and we'll monitor engine number 4, look for the rotation speed to come up, and as the rotation speed starts to climb, we are then going to introduce fuel to engine number 4.
Beechcraft Hotel Zulu Papa, hold position. Caution the British Aerospace Abroliner on the taxiway.
So there we are with the engine starting up. We're now holding up all the traffic by the sounds of it. So we're going to wait for engine number 4 to spool up.
Hold position. Beechcraft Hotel Zulu Papa.
We'd expect the lights to go out on here for engine number 4. And also the ignition lights to go out on there, which they've done. The ignition lights are out and we have the light out there. Engine number 4 is good. So let's go to engine number 3 and do the same again. So engine number 3 is starting to spool up. We are set and ready. Let's introduce the fuel. And there we see it's starting to properly spin up now with the fuel on board. We have ignition. We'll wait for the ratings to come up.
Aberdeen ground, Cessna Golf, Quebec Lima Victor X-ray, requesting pushback. Cessna Golf,
They have done.
Victor X-ray pushback request accepted.
Engine 2. It's starting to spin up. We have rotation.
Aberdeen ground, Cessna
Introduce the
Golf,
fuel.
Romeo Uniform Juliet with November request taxi to the active north departure. Cessna Golf, Hotel Romeo Uniform Juliet, taxi to and hold short of runway tree 4 via taxiway Delta Mike.
What we're going to do is we've finished taxiing, so we are going to set the parking brake.
25 when ready.
Parking brake is now set, so we can close the toolbar feature down. Engines are spooling up on number 2.
Taxi to and hold short runway tree 4 using taxiway Delta Mike Mike 2 Mike 1, Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet. Aberdeen ground Cessna Golf.
And engine number 1.
Requesting the end of pushback. Cessna Golf, Quebec Lima Victor X-ray request to end pushback received.
So engine 1 is turning over. Let's introduce the fuel.
Aberdeen ground Cessna Golf, Quebec Lima Victor X-ray with November request taxi for takeoff departure to the east. Cessna Golf, Quebec Lima Victor X-ray taxi to and hold short of runway tree 4 using taxiway, Bravo Delta.
Okay, so we want to get some more lights on, so we're going to turn our nav lights on and our strobes.
25 when ready.
Beacons are on. We're almost ready to start taxiing.
Hold position. Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner on the taxiway.
Okay, so we have good ignition on 1. Set this back to the centre and turn the start master switch off. We'll now put generators 1 and 4 on.
Uniform Juliet.
Both generators are on and working, which is good. We will put our taxi lights on.
Taxiing hold short runway tree 4 using taxiway, Bravo Delta 0, Delta Mike 2 Mike 1, Cessna Lima.
Check that we are ready to go. We look good. So I'm going to release the brakes and we're going to start and taxi out. Brakes are released. Give the engines a little bit of power just to get us moving. And we are starting our taxi.
Cessna Lima Victor X-ray hold position. Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner.
So next thing we want to do is start turning on the icing protection. So we'll turn on the pitot heaters with that switch.
Caution the
The
Cessna
screen heaters will go in.
taxiway. Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, continue taxi.
We want to go to taxiway Mike, which is in front of us.
Hold position. Cessna
You see on the banner there, Mike is in front.
Roger Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet.
We are clear in both directions.
Cessna Lima Victor X-ray, continue taxi.
So, we can now turn off the
Cessna Romeo Uniform
APU generator.
Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner.
So we'll turn off the air conditioning from there. We'll put the air conditioning on
Cessna Romeo
from the engines.
continue taxi.
Here is Mike.
Roger Cessna Lima Victor X-ray. Roger Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet.
Doesn't actually look much like Mike, does it? So we'll go down this way to Mike. I don't know why it's showing Mike as being ahead when it clearly wasn't. So let's turn the bleed valves on for the air conditioning. That is set.
Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, hold position. Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner.
We want to set our transponder to on.
Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet.
Our transponder is now set. Would help if I kept going in a straight line as well. It's not really very clever.
Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner on the taxiway.
We can turn the APU
Cessna Romeo
generator off
continue taxi.
and just check that we have
Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, hold position. Caution the
engine generators are working.
taxiway. Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, continue taxi.
We can now turn the
Romeo Uniform Juliet.
APU off.
British Aerospace Avroliner on the taxiway. Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, continue taxi.
Right, as we're taxiing out now, next thing we want to do is we're going to set the flaps ready for takeoff. There's our flaps in and set, ready for takeoff.
Uniform Juliet.
See the flaps are coming through, so we're getting somewhere.
Cessna Romeo Uniform
We're
Juliet.
going to want to
Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner on the
set our engine TMS setting into takeoff go around mode, which they are now set. That these indicators here show that we would need to bring our throttles forward to reach the targets we want.
Roger Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet.
And we'll continue to taxi out towards the runway.
Romeo Uniform Juliet, hold position. Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner on the taxiway. Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, continue taxi.
Right, we are pretty much set for what we want now. We are going to go and get the crew to take their seats.
Cabin crew, please take your seats for takeoff.
And here we are at runway 34. So we're going to stop here and wait for permission to enter the runway.
Cabin is secure.
Okay, cabin crew are ready for takeoff, which is fine. We're going to put the parking brake on and we're just going to run through our last checks on the aircraft now.
Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, hold position. Caution the British Aerospace Avroliner on...
Lights are all set. Seatbelt sign should have been on. It is now.
Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet, continue taxi.
Air conditioning is set correctly. Bleed is set. Ice protection is
Uniform Juliet,
set.
hold position. Caution the British Aerospace
Batteries are
Avroliner on
set.
the taxiway.
Autopilot
Cessna Romeo Uniform
avionics
Juliet,
are
continue
set.
taxi.
We
Romeo Uniform Juliet,
are
caution the British Aerospace
pretty much ready to go. So we're going to switch over to
Cessna Romeo
tower.
Juliet, continue taxi.
And we're also going to retune the standby frequency on radio number 1 to our departure frequency, ready for when we have to contact departure on the way out. So that's now copied across, ready for us to be able to very quickly flick across into our departure frequency as we need to. So now let's contact the tower and ask for clearance.
Aberdeen Tower, Jersey 267, ready for departure runway 34 IFR to Norwich.
Jersey 267 QNH, 29.77 wind 161 at 6. Cleared for takeoff runway 34.
So there's our takeoff clearance.
Cleared for takeoff runway 34, Jersey 267.
Yeah, we'll just check that the runway is clear before we enter it. And we will change from our taxi lights to our landing lights. So here we are, lined up on runway 34. Apply the brakes. We're going to now bring the throttles up, looking to match up to what the TMS recommends for us for takeoff.
TMS set to takeoff. Power set, flex achieved.
And let's roll.
Aberdeen Tower, Cessna Golf, Hotel Romeo Uniform Juliet, ready for north
Speed of light,
departure at runway 34.
8
Cessna Golf,
knots.
Hotel Romeo Uniform Juliet, line up and wait.
V1. Rotate.
Line up
V2.
and wait, Cessna Romeo Uniform Juliet.
Positive rate of climb, gear up.
Got the landing gear up.
Aberdeen Tower, Cessna Golf, Quebec Lima Victor X-ray, ready for east departure at runway.
Switch the autopilot on.
Cessna Golf, Quebec Lima Victor X-ray, hold short runway 34. Traffic is British Aerospace Avroliner on upwind. Jersey 267, contact Scottish Centre on 119.875. Good day. Hold short runway tree for Cessna Lima.
We'll set ourselves onto our runway heading. And we're now going to contact departure.
Going to 119.875, Jersey 267.
We'll switch the radios over.
Hotel Romeo Uniform Juliet.
contact departure,
Scottish Center
and we'll set the
is at 2,200 feet.
indicated airspeed is now set, which should keep us on a climb.
267 Scottish Center QNH 29.77 radar.
Arm the altimeter, and we've now got clearance to go on our navigation.
Diamond, Quebec, Mike Hotel, contact Aberdeen approach on 128.305. Good day.
And so now with everything set, with longitude and navigation set, indicated airspeed set, and our altitude armed, autopilot is on, the plane will now start to fly on the flight plan that we had set for it.
Goodbye.
Now we'll notice up here our current rate of climb is just over 2,000 feet per minute. I'm going to now bring in the flaps and bring down the throttles just a little bit. There's the runway down there, we can see the airport where we've just taken off. We're continuing to fly quite nicely at the moment, climb up quite here. So one of the reasons why we use indicated airspeed for climbing out, rather than using a vertical speed, is that this allows the aircraft to adjust the angle of attack as it sees fit to make sure we maintain a certain speed. If we pick a vertical speed, as we start to climb and the air pressure changes, the aircraft and performance dynamics will change, and we could find a situation where we actually start to run out of airspeed because we're trying to keep a certain rate of climb. So this way the rate of climb will be adjusted as opposed to the airspeed being adjusted. We shouldn't stall and fall out of the sky. Okay, I'm just going to release the crew. So the cabin crew are now released and are free to move around the cabin. Now they're up in the air, I'm going to put on the ice detection. So I don't think we're going to find any icing just around this area, around Aberdeen, but later in the flight as we're coming to descend towards Norwich, we could get into icing conditions. So the ice detection is now turned on, and that should alert us on the annunciator panel if there is any potential build-up of ice on the airframe.
Scottish Center Beechcraft, Oscar Yankee, Hotel Zulu Papa, 5,000.
Okay, we're about to go through 10,000 feet, so we will turn off the landing lights.
Hotel Zulu Papa, Scottish Center QNH 29.77.
That's the landing lights off. And we're climbing straight up towards 14,000 feet, so I'm actually going to reset the barometer back to standard pressure. I would expect another call out for us to continue our climb very shortly.
Beechcraft Foxtrot Tango Zulu, contact Munchers, approach on 123.3. Good day. Going to 123.3, Beechcraft Foxtrot Tango Zulu. Jersey 267, climb and maintain flight level 220.
So that's our next assignment is 220. So we're going to go and climb up, we'll just acknowledge that.
Climb and maintain flight level 220 Jersey 267.
And there we are, we're now set to continue our climb to flight level 220. So at this point I'm just going to sort of mention that we are, as you can see, we are climbing at just over 2,000 feet per minute. I'm going to mention that because we'll probably jump forward in the video to the point when we start to get up towards our cruise altitude. When we do come back in and you look at the our climb rate as we approach our cruise altitude, you should see that our airspeed indicator should still be in the same place. We should still be covering roughly the same sort of airspeed. Our ground speed will have changed because our ground speed changes relative to the air pressure. And so that figure will actually change, although the airspeed should stay the same. But we should also find when we come back that the climb rate has actually descended. We'll probably be somewhere more like 1,000, maybe 1,200 feet per minute, as opposed to the sort of 2,100, 2,200 feet per minute that we are currently climbing at. Okay, so since you were last with us, we've received clearance to climb up to 25,000 feet, which is what we are now doing. What I'm going to do at this point is I'm actually going to turn off the seatbelt sign so passengers can start to move around. I've changed the TMS. So we've now got it into a synchronization setting rather than the takeoff go around setting. That means basically I've got control matched onto throttle number 1, and it will match the N rating, so the engine speed rating, and as long as these other thrust levers are fairly close to engine thrust number 1, they will try and match up. The TMS system will help them to align as they should do. Now, you just heard a beep in the background. That beep was the autopilot system letting me know that we're within 1,000 feet of our target altitude. So we're going up to that now. And as I said before, our speed is still set. You can see that our climb rate has gone down, and now our climb rate is starting to drop off as we start to level up towards the 25,000 feet that we want, flight level 250. What's going to happen from this point onwards is we are obviously going to start and gain some speed now because these throttles are still set. I'm going to let us gain quite a bit of speed initially. I'm looking for a target speed of around 250 to 280 knots for our cruise speed. So I'm going to let us start to pick up speed towards that, but as we approach 250, 260 knots, I'm going to start and throttle back, and essentially for the sort of cruise portion of the flight, we're now going to spend most of our time, or most of my time, monitoring the speed and making incremental adjustments to the thrust levers to ensure that we stay within the right sort of speed that we want for our cruise. If I don't pull these thrust levers back, we will continue to get to a point where we'll go above our safe speed and we will overspeed the aircraft. At that point we will overstress the aircraft, and the aircraft will either become very difficult to fly or potentially will actually break up in flight and will crash. Obviously we don't want to crash, so I will try and avoid doing that. It was beautiful weather outside currently, so we have a nice view out there. One of the things I will be looking for, as well as trying to maintain the speed in here, because we're now in the cruise, I'm going to set the galley on, so we now have power going to the galley so that the flight attendants can serve the passengers any food and refreshments that they want. I'm also going to start to look towards our landing. I know we're miles and miles away yet from coming into land at Norwich, but I'm going to start and consider the things we want to do. So a little bit later into the cruise we shall come back and I shall start to take you through some of the planning I'm going to do for our approach to landing at Norwich. At this point I'm now going to start and wind the thrust levers back. We're approaching 250 knots. I would expect us to continue to increase speed even with the thrust levers pulled back to where they are. But as I say, from now on during the cruise I will continue to monitor airspeed and adjust our thrust levers accordingly. And of course, as well as monitoring the speed, I'll be keeping a check on all of the instruments for the engines, making sure we're looking good, and also through the flight plan. So we're now moving on to page 2 of our flight plan, and so I'll be tracking that as we go through, as well as following on the other UNC1 for our navigation readings through here as we continue along our route. For anybody who may be a motor racing fan, just out the window here is Knock Hill Motor Racing Circuit. And there we have the Forth Bridges.
1,200 feet. Keep speed not above 210 knots. Expect ILS runway 24 approach via Tango Lima Alpha. Transition cleared to Tango Lima. Report them in sight.
Okay, so we're now turning onto the Yankee 96 airway and heading down towards the north of England, or northeast of England.
X-ray traffic alert. 1 o'clock, less than 1 mile, 7,000 feet.
So what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to take this opportunity while we're in the cruise to start and think about our landing at Norwich. So we know we're supposed to be coming in and using runway 25, runway 27 as things stand currently. So what I'm going to want to do is, I'm going to want to go and start to get set up, assuming that we will go to runway 27. So I'm going to go to our arrival airport, which is Norwich, and I'm going to want to look at our approaches, and we're going to look at the runway 27 ILS approach. So if we load the chart in for Norwich on ILS runway 27, we can see that the runway heading is actually 268 degrees. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to set this course value here, and we're just turning onto our heading down on Yankee 96, but I'm going to set this course value here to our runway heading for when we get to Norwich. So we're going to tune that down to 268 degrees.
Romax 6657, contact Edinburgh approach on 128.908. Good day.
So there we are, set at 268 degrees, and our runway frequency for the ILS is 110.9. So I'm going to tune the nav radio into 110.9. So we now have our standby frequency on there at 110.9. Now actually it's a little bit different in the British Airspace 146.
Charlie airspace.
In most aircraft you would switch from your active frequency to your standby frequency. In the 146 you can just press this switch here and that will set which of these two is active here to these two frequencies.
Sierra traffic is 10 o'clock 3 miles at 6,500 feet Cessna Skyhawk.
If we just look at the minute, we can see our airspeed is dropping down a little bit. We are flying into the wind
Manchester Center.
a little bit now, so we're getting a bit of reduction in speed. So I'm just going to bring our thrust levers back up a little bit.
Scottish Center JMP Aviation Golf. Kilo Delta Charlie Whiskey 8.
And we should see that our ground speed and airspeed start to increase again.
Kilo Delta Charlie Whiskey Scottish Center QNH 29.87 radar contact continue. Diamond Echo Zulu Delta.
And this is very much what we mean in terms of having to chase the needles all the time. We're constantly chasing these speeds, constantly monitoring these speeds,
Traffic
and having to keep constant adjustment on the thrust levers to keep us within the ballpark of the figure we want to be in.
in sight. Blue Max 127 contact Edinburgh approach on 128.908. Good day.
And I expect that we will also be handed over to Manchester Control shortly and have to tune in to Manchester ATC.
November Mike traffic is 10 o'clock 4 miles at 6,200 feet Cessna Skyhawk. Report them in sight.
One of the other thing that I am going to do at this point is I also want to look at Norwich Airport,
Report them in
and the control tower at Norwich is on 124.255. So
November Mike.
a little bit before we did for the takeoff, I'm going to set our COM2 radio standby frequency to 124.255, and that will give me two options. I could either switch over to using the COM2 radio as we come into land at Norwich, or I could just use the setting from there as a reminder to program into the COM1 radio. The reason why I'm setting all these things up, so the reason why I've set this as a reminder on here on the COM2 radio for the tower frequency, and the reason why I've already set the course heading and the navigation radio frequencies in here, is once we come into land at Norwich, especially in this aircraft because of the manual inputs that are required, there will be an awful lot of having to fight the thrust levers, maintain the speed, keep an eye on what we're doing, fly the aircraft in for the landing, adjusting all of the autopilot settings where we need them.
Climb and maintain.
So it's a very busy environment on the approach, and so basically just trying to do as many of these things in advance as I can and give myself as many tips as I can in advance just will reduce the workload as we come in towards our landing at Norwich.
Cessna Alpha Papa Yankee traffic in sight.
Descend.
118.775 Alpine tree 834.
So that was our traffic alert. We could see the aircraft out to the side of us and above us. The traffic alert, as you can see on our vertical speed indicator, also works for traffic indications there, and that was just alerting us to let us know the aircraft was there and that we should descend to avoid any conflict if required. So we've now got our clearance to go and transfer to Manchester, so we'll confirm that.
Going to 118.77 flight, Jersey 2.
And we will now program COM1 frequency into 118.775 and contact Manchester Control.
Center, Jersey 267, flight level 250.
Jersey 267, Manchester Center, radar contact, continue.
Okay, so we've now left the Yankee 96 airway and we are on a direct course down to Otteringham on the Oscar Tango Romeo. As you can see, we're just over 90 miles away from there. At that point, once we get down to Oscar Tango Romeo, we will be expecting to start getting instructions, or even possibly just before then, to start our descent into Norwich. But for now, things are still good. We're still cruising at 25,000 feet. You see our airspeed is right up on our limit now. So we're going to pull these thrust levers back again, just to drop a bit of speed off. And we should see the ground speed start to decrease. Actually, it's still increasing slightly for now. Let's take a little bit more power out. And as we can see, we did see on the weather, when we checked it before we took off, that there was some cloud cover over the east of England. As you can see, we're getting in towards that front of cloud cover in front of us now. So, as I said, one of the things I am going to keep an eye on as we start to get down towards this area of cloud here is the possibility of icing conditions. So I'll be keeping an eye on the annunciator panel here, just in case we do get any reference of ice come in. And at that point, if we do, I may add some of the extra icing control functions that we have set on here for ice protection on the tail and the wings. Okay, so there we are. We've just got our handover to London Control, and we're also just past the Oscar Tango Romeo waypoint, and we're just turning very slightly to head on to our final route down towards Norwich. So let's tune in London Control, and we may start getting some descent instructions fairly soon.
Departure frequency is 11.
London Center, Jersey 267, flight level 250.
Jersey 267, London Center, radar contact, continue. Ryanair 9er descend and maintain flight level tree 80. Jersey 267 descend and maintain.
And there we go, we get our first instruction to go and descend.
Altitude. Climb and maintain flight level tree 30. Keep speed not above 230 knots. Climb and maintain flight level tree 80. Ryanair 9er.
And as usual with London Control, we can't get a word in.
Descend and maintain 13,000 feet, Jersey 267.
Climb and maintain flight level tree 30. Keep speed not above 230 knots. Emirates 164 heavy.
So I am this time using vertical speed to pitch us down to just over 2,000 feet a minute. So we're going to want to bring the engines down a little bit, and we still need to go and set our target
Diamond X-ray Mike November traffic is 12 o'clock, 4 miles. At
to
JMB Aviation Group.
13,000 feet.
Them in sight. Easy tree 060, you are 800 feet below your assigned altitude. Climb and maintain flight level tree 60. JMB Aviation Bravo, Lima Mike traffic is 9 o'clock, 4 miles at 9,000 feet Diamond BA40. Report them in sight. London Center Cessna Golf, Tango Juliet Papa Charlie, 7,400 feet. Cessna Golf, Tango Juliet Papa Charlie London Center QNH to 9.85 radar contact. Continue.
So we're now going down into the cloud. As you can see,
JMB
ice has been detected. We said there might be some ice detected, so we have got ice detected. I'm going to turn on the
Diamond X-ray Mike November have the traffic.
anti-ice. And at this stage now it's a case of monitoring airspeed, particularly as we start to descend and coming towards our landing. So we're not too far out from the airport now. We're about 60 miles from the next waypoint, and then I turn on to final, so maybe 60-65 miles from landing. Because we've got a bit of weather build-up in front of us, it's not severe weather, but either way, what we are going to do at this stage is I'm going to put the seatbelt sign back on just ahead of time. It's one less thing to think about on the approach. Also, at this point now, I'm going to want to turn the galley service off, so I'm going to
Diamond Charlie Charlie Alpha.
turn
10 o'clock, 4 miles at 8,000
the
feet.
electrical feed through to the galley off,
Report them in sight.
and I'm going to have a quick check
Lima Mike contact Manchester Center on
and our
775.
airports just on our METAR readings, and we're going to go and change the barometer. We're on the descent already now, so we'll change the barometer settings. Again, I'm going to use the quick mapping I've got on my controls. As you can see, we've now changed that down to 29.86.
JMB Aviation Bravo Lima Mike. Goodbye. Diamond Charlie Charlie Alpha traffic alert. 1 o'clock, less than 1 mile, 8,100 feet. JMB Aviation.
I'm going to bring the throttles back a bit further, so again, reduce thrust even more.
JMB Aviation Papa Mike Yankee have the Diamond BA40 in sight. Diamond Charlie Charlie Alpha have the traffic.
And as we're coming through towards 16,000 feet now, I expect we may get clearance to descend below flight level 130 before too long. So we've got a bit of a shower out to the side here, a little bit of rain. We may pick up the odd shower. I'll go through the odd bit of rain as we're coming in towards landing again, especially with the icing conditions, just something to be very aware of. If things got particularly turbulent, we do have a turbulence setting on the autopilot we can put on here. The idea of this is, rather than trying to chase the values that it's trying to do, so whichever turnings or altitude changes, etc., that just actually tells the autopilot to smooth out its transitions a little bit to cope with the turbulence. Obviously with turbulence you'll start to bounce around, so if you're set at a certain altitude and all of a sudden you start getting pockets of air and you're bouncing up and down in those pockets of air, you don't want the autopilot heavily chasing those changes in altitude. So putting the turbulence button on both for altitude and for longitudinal navigation will just smooth out the inputs that the autopilot has. So again, we've just heard the horn go off there to let us know we're within 1,000 feet of our target altitude.
At 4,000 feet, Cessna 152. Report them in sight. JMB Aviation Papa Mike Yankee. Contact Conings by approach on 119.2. Good day.
We're now leveling off at 13,000.
Jersey 267 descend and maintain.
And there we go, our other instruction to 5,000. A little bit later than I would have liked.
Descend and maintain 5,000 feet.
Just makes it a little bit more difficult for us because we've now got to go in and reset everything again.
119.2 JMB Aviation Papa Mike Yankee. Goodbye.
Okay, let's keep the altitude down to 5,000.
ISS 667 tree descend and maintain flight level tree 40.
That's our target now, set at 5,000, and we're coming down at
Descend and
2,500 feet per minute.
UKSS 6.
I will actually just dial that back a little. So we're around 2,000 feet per minute. That should do us for this part of the descent. Okay, we're approaching 10,000 feet. We are about to go into this cloud layer. I'm aware there's an aircraft out over to the left.
You are 300 feet.
Need to keep an eye on that in case it comes in across us.
Descend and maintain flight level.
Cloud is broken, which is good.
Cessna Golf Charlie Bravo descend and maintain flight level 240. London Center Cessna Golf Sierra Yankee Alpha Alpha 3003.
As we transition through 10,000 feet,
267 contact.
I will set us on to the landing lights.
Golf Sierra Yankee.
We've also got clearance to contact Norwich approach now.
Decimal 88 radar contact continued. Diamond Charlie Charlie Alpha traffic is 5 o'clock 4 miles at
On 128.33.
Airliner. Report them in sight.
Going to 128.3 Jersey 267.
Let's say it does start to get very, very busy at this point. Keep an eye on our airspeed.
Have the British Aerospace Airliner in sight.
And let's contact Norwich approach.
Norwich approach Jersey 267 is at 8,800 feet, descending 5,000 feet.
Jersey 267 Norwich approach QNH 298.
So you can see the barometer is 2988. We're at 2986 currently, so we'll set that to 2988. That gets us lined up to where we need to be. And our landing lights should now be on below 10,000 feet. Airspeed is quite high. We now want to start and bring some of this airspeed off, so we're going to bring the throttles right back at this point. And I'm going to bring in some air brake as well. So bring some air brake on. Let's start and get these speeds down as we start to get down towards our 5,000 feet. Now I'm expecting to use either 30 or 33 degrees of flap for our landing. So again, I'm going to use the V reference which we've got on here on our reference card. I'm just going to click on that, and that's going to reset the speed bugs that we see on both sides, ready for me for our landing. So there we are. We have the V speed set at 123 now. And we're approaching 5,000 feet. Bit of heavy cloud in front of us. We'll take the air brake off now. I don't want the air brake on at this point. Keep the throttles low for a moment, but we will have to put those back up again shortly in order to keep our airspeed up. So we're about 12 miles away from our next transition point, which would then turn us in towards the runway. So we're probably somewhere between 15-17 miles away from landing. That's assuming that we come directly into land first time. As I say, we may actually go and fly over the airport and then go into a circuit and before we actually get clearance to come and land. So our airspeed's still looking good. We're at 200 knots at the moment. Obviously I want to bring that back for the actual landing itself. And we've now got clearance to descend to 2,000 feet.
Descend and maintain 2,000 feet, Jersey 267.
So just continue to descend from there and set our target to 2,000. Our target is at 2,000 feet. And at this point now we definitely want to bring the air brake in again, start to slow us down. And we're going to start to prepare to assume that we're coming directly in for a landing first time. That's the safe way to go.
118.475 Diamond Zulu Alpha Tango. Goodbye.
So if we bring our airspeed down slow enough, we're soon going to start bringing the flaps in.
Norwich approach JMB Aviation Golf Lima Mike Whiskey is type.
And at that point we will have to keep a very close eye on our airspeed because we will start to lose speed quite rapidly.
Request flight
Speed
following.
check low 205. Select flaps.
So there we get our clearance for our first flap setting. We'll bring those into flaps 18.
632.
Now we should start to find that the speed starts to descend, starts to drop off quite quickly.
2,500.
Speed check low 205.
JMB
Select
Aviation Lima Mike.
So we are clear for gear down if we want to.
JMB Aviation Lima Mike Whiskey radar contact 1 mile southwest of Echo Golf Oscar Foxtrot 300 feet. UNH 29er.
I'm actually going to start and put a bit more power in.
Kilo Victor Foxtrot contact London Center on 118.475. Good day.
We're now turning on towards finals.
118.475 Cessna Kilo Victor Foxtrot.
I'm going to bring us down one more notch of flaps pretty shortly.
Roger, JMB Aviation Lima Mike Whiskey. Cessna Lima Juliet November contact London Center on 118.475. Good day.
And I'm going to get our radio tuned in ready
Approach on 136.
for 124.255
Good day.
for the tower.
136.5 JMB Aviation Lima Mike Whiskey. Goodbye.
More flaps in and more power.
118.475 Cessna Lima Juliet November. Goodbye.
And what we're going to do now is I'm actually going to change over to heading. And I'm going to want to set the heading berg to be opposite of where we are currently. And let's set vertical speed.
Descend, descend, descend.
Okay, we should be about over the runway currently. Still want us to descend a little bit further. We've gone over the top of the runway, so I'm now going to select to go to heading. And I'm going to want to set our heading from opposite the runway. So we're going to go to about 86 degrees for our heading. Altitude is now held. And we're going to bring the throttles down a little bit again because we want to lose a bit more speed at this point. So we're now flying away from the runway, keeping a very close eye on that speed. You can see weather conditions are not exactly brilliant around here. And I'm going to take us off into nav so we can start to acquire the ILS for our landing. You can see the route we actually want to take is behind us currently, and we are currently below where we'd want to be, or above where I'd want to be, sorry, on the glide slope at this distance from the airport. So I'm going to wait for the tower to give us, for approach to give us final clearance. When they do, we'll spin back round the other way again, and then we'll try to acquire the runway. Again, just keeping a close eye on that speed. We're dropping speed a little bit, so I'm just going to give us a little bit more power. And there we go, there's our instruction to come in and make our approach.
Tower on 124.255, Jersey 267.
So put more throttle on, and we're now going to drop the undercarriage and get the crew to take their seats for landing.
please take your seatbelt.
I'll drop more flap in. Let's contact the tower.
118.475 Beechcraft.
Norwich Tower, Jersey 2677 miles east inbound, ILS runway 27 approach.
Jersey 267, Norwich Tower. QNH 29er.88, wind 219er at 7. Cleared ILS runway 27 approach.
Cleared ILS runway 27 approach, Jersey 267.
Jersey 267, wind 219er at 7. Cleared to land runway 27.
Cleared to land runway 27, Jersey 267.
Okay, it looks like we're going to end up flying this thing manually then. It's not what I intended doing. I didn't intend flying a manual approach, especially in these weather conditions, but it looks like that's what we've got. Keep an eye on the instruments. There's an aircraft ahead of us. And here we are getting ourselves lined up on towards runway 27. A little bit of a crosswind. We're a little bit high at the moment, so let's drop throttles right back. Put the air brake on just to drop a bit more speed out.
500. Plus 100. Minimums.
Continue.
$50, $40, $30, $20, $10.
Ground idle.
Well, we're down. Speed brake is alive.
Yellow wing spoilers. Brake pressure seen. 80 knots. 60 knots.
And there we go.
Jersey 267, turn next taxiway. Jersey 267 contact ground on 124.255.
So acknowledge the handover.
124.255.
We'll now put on the taxi lights, landing lights off, and we'll ask to go to taxi to parking.
Norwich ground Jersey 267 taxi to
Need to get this eyes protection stuff
Jersey 267
off.
taxi to general aviation parking using taxiway.
Taxiing to general aviation parking using taxiway Jersey 267.
We'll start to bring the flaps up. And we'll get the APU started. So APU is coming on. Flaps are up. APU is running. Just going to check we've got pressure and power in the APU, which we have. So I'll put the APU generator on, turn off the other generators, and then we're going to want to put the APU air conditioning on, turn off the bleeds, turn off the packs.
Cabin crew, door command.
So I'll let the cabin crew know that they can disarm the doors. I assume we're going to be parking in this first slot here by the looks of it. I don't see any other ground crew out, so this must be our parking slot. Yeah, this is our parking slot, okay. Let's turn the taxi lights off so we don't blind the poor guy that's guiding us in. And there we are stopped. Put the brakes on. Parking brake is set. The APU generator is running and on. At this point we can turn off most of the lights, leave the nav light on, and we're going to start and shut the engines down. Wait for the engines to go. Let's turn the heaters off. Let's turn the pitot heaters off because they should be off. Let's turn our transponder off. The transponder is off. Everything else is set where it needs to be for now. We can turn these fuel pumps off but leave the inner pump on for the APU to keep running. And we should now be able to consider starting the deboarding. So let's turn the seatbelt sign off. And let's give permission to start deboarding. And with the chocks on, we will now request ground power and wait for ground power to become active and available. External power is now available and is showing on here as well. So So we're now going to put the external power on. That takes the APU generator offline. We'll cancel that, and that means we can now also shut the APU unit down as well. So let's turn the APU setting off with the aircon, and let's shut off the APU. We can turn the AC pump and DC pumps off. Engine pumps can go off. Turn off the yaw damper. Turn off the autopilot master switch. Anti-skid goes off. The lift spoilers can go off. Emergency lights and no smoking sign will stay on for now. We can turn off the ice detection and cage it. As soon as we're on the ground now, we'll turn off the weather radar system. We can turn off the radios, we can turn off the ADF, and let's turn off the VHF navigation. Flight directors can be disarmed. And we'll wait for the passengers to deboard. We can disarm the standby inverters and standby generator, don't need those on. Turn off the UNC flight computers. We don't need those. We can shut down the radio communication window that we've got on there. One thing we do have on here that I don't use very often, but it is actually a reference charts. So we have a number of different reference charts in here for things like approach speeds and things like that. So you can go in and look at what sort of speeds you should be doing at any particular phase within the flight. But there's lots of reference cards in there which you can go and look at when flying the aircraft, which is quite useful. Okay, we just got the last few passengers to get off. Okay, so the aircraft is deboarded, luggage has been taken off. We can shut the cargo doors. I can now bring up the stairs. Or maybe we can't because it doesn't want to go to the next stage on there. Come on. No, it's not going to let me shut the stairs off at this point. Which is a shame, but never mind. Okay, so at this point we're going to start and switch everything down now. So again, using my controls that I've got mapped, we're going to turn off the avionics suites, and you should see everything flicker around a little bit. Yep, so there's both avionics suites turned off. And now with the avionics suites turned off, our next thing we're going to do is we're going to go and turn the battery off. So there's our batteries off. And then we're going to, nav lights will be off. Plane is now pretty much cold and dark. The only thing we need to do now is to turn off the external power supply and shut the aircraft down. And there we go. So that's the end of our flight from Aberdeen to Norwich. Landing didn't quite go according to plan. We didn't manage to pick up the ILS like we should have done, which was a little bit frustrating and made life a little bit more difficult for us for the landing. But either way, we are down, everything's complete, and I hope you enjoyed the flight. I'll see you again soon.